Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Adult Improver edition of Perpetual Chess. Of course, this is a recurring series, been going on for years, where instead of interviewing a top grandmaster or author or trainer, we interview a fellow amateur from the chess world where they talk about their passion for chess and their chess improvement advice. And we will introduce our guest momentarily, but first I did want to give a couple shout outs. Number one, to recent Perpetual Chess Patreon subs, Martin Weir, Matt Broadhead, and Olaf. I'm not going to lie, I've been slacking a little bit lately on the Patreon Perpetual Chess special events. I've been cramming to finish a book, my manuscript. I guess you call it a manuscript. I don't know. It's nonfiction. Anyway, it's due soon. But in the meantime, why not support the podcast anyway? You get access to ad-free episodes. You get advance notice of guests so you can submit questions. And the special events will return soon. I also wanted to remind listeners to subscribe to my free newsletter, the Perpetual Chess Linkfest. Lately, I've been linking to more and more chess improvement related stuff as opposed to chess news. I cover both, but there does seem to be particular interest in reading about other people's blogs about their own chess improvement efforts, both again from trainers and from amateurs. So be sure you're sub to that. Link in the show notes. Also, anytime there's like a mainstream chess story, which sometimes can slip through the cracks if it gets covered in some big newspaper or something, I always try to link to those so that you can see what other people are saying about us. Last but not least, before we introduce our guest, I did want to give a shout out to our presenting chess education sponsors, Chessable.com. We will be talking to one of their most accomplished community authors. But I'm also excited about some other new courses on Chessable. Fire on Board by the legend GM Alexei Shirov. Big fan of that book, and now it's on Chessable. GM Niclas Huscenbeth has a new attacking E4 repertoire for club players. So be sure to take a look at all that they have to offer, both for free and for purchase. And you can check out a list of my recommended courses as well. So without further ado, let's introduce our guest. He is, as we said, a prolific community author on Chessable. I've actually often recommended his Visualize series in particular, which we'll be discussing. It helps you learn to think ahead in chess. Our guest, John Neely, started playing competitive chess and went from zero to the English Chess Federation equivalent of roughly 1800 after starting at age 36. But he was far from an overnight success. It was an 8 to 9 year odyssey, and he was putting in 4 to 5 hours a day on chess while working. He's now taking a break from OTB chess to focus on outside interests, but we both thought it would be a good time for him to reflect on all the progress he's made and all that he's learned and share a few lessons. So let's welcome John Neely to the show. Welcome, John.
Well, thank you, Ben. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, excited. And it's funny because I had recommended your courses. You publish on Chessable as Benedictine, and I've been a big fan of
it. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've used it both as in my work teaching and for my own training, and it's an incredible series. But John, why don't we start, since I know that you started chess at 36, but I don't know many details beyond that. What got you into chess at a relatively late age?
Well, actually, my dad actually did teach me how to play chess when I was sort of 7 or 8. So I did kind of like know the moves and things like that, and a little bit of chess exposure, which probably helped. As a teenager, like when, for example, when the Sharp and Kasparov match was playing, I was at school, and that created quite a buzz a little bit, around school and things like that. Like first time that chess had actually been on TV, from what I was aware of. So I played a few games there, but nothing serious. And I had a book when I was 17. But apart from that, I've got age 36. That's right. Yes, 2014. No, 2011. Yeah, 34 actually. 36 is when I played my first tournament.
Okay.
So I was drilling tactics from 2011. I've wrote this down to 2013 before I started playing, and then it was 36 my first tournament
Okay,
that I
and what
played in
what
Europe.
rekindled your interest? What made you decide to start drilling tactics after a
Well,
lifetime of not
it's
drilling
just
tactics?
randomly started drilling tactics. Now, what it was, you see, I was studying a degree part time, 2005 to 2011. I was working full time and then doing my degree at night. And when I finished that, there was a sort of a void there, I kind of got used to that pattern of coming home and working on something, and then at the weekend, like researching things. And I suppose I did look at doing a master's, but I just couldn't afford it. So I eventually somehow must have picked up the old chess book or something as I started doing chess. I don't know what got me into it, but chess is like that, isn't it? You can play one game or you can see one puzzle and it can sort of suck you in. And I imagine it's just that really. And yeah, and I went from there, and I thought, well, this is going to be my next sort of project, really. Yeah.
And you mentioned in our email, John, that at some point you made a rating goal of, again, we're talking equivalents here because you're in the English Chess Federation, but roughly the
Yeah,
goal of 1800. How did you settle on that?
I did, yeah, because I looked around and I thought I did a little bit of research and I thought, what's a decent level to get to? And that's a difficult question because it depends, on your starting point and things like that. And you do see these threads where I've got 1 year study, I want to be a grandmaster,
Right.
and you see those threads all the time, don't you? And you get things like 10 or 12 people saying it's not possible, and then you get one person at the bottom goes, you can do it, blah blah blah. And I thought, after reading all that and reading into it, how difficult it is, I thought grandmaster's not going to be like doable or any sort of title player. And I sort of looked around thinking, well, 1800 seems to be like a decent club player. It's you can walk into a chess club and 800 probably puts you in the middle somewhere. So I thought that'd be a decent target if I can aim to be that sort of person, really. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not easy. I mean, it's not easy to start tournament
Oh.
chess, as you said, at 36 and to make it to 1800. So kudos to
Yeah.
you. Why do you think you were able to do it when others might struggle?
I think it's just because, well, I did have that little bit of exposure to chess early on. I think that's important, so you always acknowledge that. But probably was sort of 1200 ish with doing the chess puzzles. I had like one puzzle book that I look through now and again. And maybe that helped. I don't know. Maybe that gave me a sort of platform. And then basically it was 2011 to 2013, just basically cocooning myself, doing tactics and annotated games, annotated master games. Before, I mean, what I should have done really is I made a lot of mistakes. I should have gone down to the chess club, and then I then would be getting exposure with, playing the games and things like that. But I didn't want to go into the chess club being like the weakest player, which is silly, really. It's not that people are going to be laughing at you or anything like that. But I've never been into a chess club before, and you just having played a couple of games when you're young, I didn't want to do that, so I wanted to sort of try and get to a decent level first, if that makes sense. And then
Okay.
and then that's what I did. And I went into the chess, started playing a couple of friendly games at the end of 2013. My first game was 2014.
Oh,
Yeah,
your
so I
first
was
tournament
36
game.
at that point. Yeah,
And what did
and it
that
was a
feel like?
rapid game. It was really enjoyable, actually. It was a good experience, and it was a rapid event. It was a one-off rapid event in York, and I like York, so I thought let's go. And what I actually did is it was my brother's birthday around about that time, and I said, I've got a surprise for you because my brother plays a little bit of chess as well. And I said, I'll come to York. I've got a surprise for you. I said, what is it? I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you. So I got him a train ticket, and we're on the way on the train. He's probably thinking, "Are we going to do York races or something? Or we're going to go on a pub crawl or something like that?" And I said, "Yeah, no, I've actually put you into a chess tournament, you know." And he wasn't really very pleased about that. But I said, "You've done what?" I said, "Yeah, it could be all right, it'd be fun." Basically, I want a company on the train, So I put him into that tournament, and we both unrated. We both never played before, and I played this guy. I think it was under 1700, if from memory, was like the section under 1700. Yeah, so I played this guy the first game, and I've never used a chess clock before. Right, no idea what I'm doing. It's one of those old analog clocks, and I'm doing okay actually. I'm playing well. So this is the first game. He's 1700, so he's at the top of that section, and the game went. Oh, I think there were 20 minutes, no increment, and we get to the end, and all the other games had finished. I'm thinking like, what's going on here? Well, this is, and everybody comes and watches the game, don't you? That was a new experience, like for me. And I'm playing the game, and I'm thinking, well, it's an end game, and it's why has everybody else stopped? I don't know. Anyway, I actually resigned because I was losing in a losing position. I thought, do the gentlemanly thing, resign. And then he said, what's that? I said, you resign? He said, yeah, I'm resigning. Yeah, obviously I'm losing in this position. And he went, okay, and he walked off, and he took the ticket back to the counter. And then this guy outside him tapped me on the shoulder and said, you do realise you'd won on time 5 minutes ago, don't you? His flags dropped.
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
had it? I'm like, yeah, yeah. And then your flag dropped, and you're both playing on, and your flags have dropped. I'm like, I've never used a clock. I don't know what I'm doing. So, and I says also, and then suddenly realised, wow, the chess is pretty cutthroat, the tournament chess. So that was that experience. And then I ended up winning 3 or 4 of those games in the rest of the tournament. So I was quite pleased with that. I think I won 4. I think lost another game. So I finished somewhere like fifth or something like that, which is
That's
quite
really
good.
good for a first tournament.
Yeah, it was the first tournament, and didn't really know what we were doing, but I should have practiced with a clock. But the friendly games I'd done at the club, And not we don't use the clocks in the friendly games, so
Okay.
I don't know what to do.
I'm a
Yeah.
bit surprised that they so someone claimed it as a win for you, because often the rule would be like you need to claim it
No, no,
yourself.
no, no, no. I lost the game because
Ah,
I didn't
okay.
claim the win. I didn't know
Gotcha.
I had to claim the win because the clocks, the flag fell, and the guy
Okay.
I resigned, and he took the resignation, and then he claimed the point for that. So I won the game on time, but just didn't know how to use the clock, and I didn't know I had to claim the win on time, and didn't
Gotcha.
actually know what was going on with the flag thing. I was like, does it make a noise? I have no idea. So yeah,
Okay.
in
Yeah.
hindsight, obviously I should have practiced with the clock, but we didn't.
Yeah, so a couple good lessons there for listeners who haven't played a tournament.
Absolutely,
Number one,
definitely.
practice with the clock. But also, as John
Yeah,
alludes to, he's referring to an analog clock that you're unlikely to see here more than 10 years later. You're likely to see a digital one where even if you've never played a tournament before, you'll probably be able to tell when they run out of time. But but it's a funny
yeah.
story of a baptism by fire.
Oh
So,
gosh,
did
yeah.
you feel like you knew what to do after that? Like, did you feel like you had a firm command of how to get better at chess?
Um, sort of. I knew I was doing a lot. I did a lot of research on how to get better at chess. I was kept googling it and was reading stuff all the time, other people's opinions. Dan Heisman. I used to follow his column. I think he talks a lot of sense. Still does. And I was just trying to find people who seemed to like know what they were talking about in terms of adult improvement. And I was just following their advice and collating it all really. And the predominant theme seemed to be tactics.
Hmm.
Tactics study and things like that. And so that's where I focused all of my attention, virtually all of my attention on tactics, and then annotated games as well. And I did have this coach for it was at the school that I worked at, and I had him for a few sessions, but then he left. Nothing to do with me, hope. And he looked at a couple of my online games that I played, and he just says, "Oh, you need to be a lot more aggressive." I says, "So I need to be a lot more aggressive?" No, no. He says, "You need to be a lot more aggressive."
Hmm.
Right? He says, "What you need to do, you need to play e4, develop your pieces, and be really aggressive." Right? And forget the opening study. So okay, so I just did that, for like the next 3 years, basically. Even though we only had like 2 or 3 sessions with him, and I kind of went with that advice, really. So
And you felt
yeah,
it helped?
yeah. I mean, because I when I did start doing the opening stuff, I mean, I got to basically 1600-ish, like just on tactics and some idea of general strategy, having played through the annotated games with virtually no opening knowledge whatsoever. My opening knowledge was play e4 and bang the knights out. Got to be honest, and develop pieces rapidly. And sometimes I would lose out the opening or get worse positions. But in my early games, they were not sophisticated at all. Just sort of shuffle the pieces around and fish for tactics, basically. So yeah.
Okay.
And then it's later on I started adding other elements to it and a bit more strategy, and it finally did the openings, which
Okay.
yeah, I've never really liked
And
doing, to be honest.
and you've mentioned that at times you were doing 4 to 5 hours a day. Was that already the case in
Yeah.
this period you describe?
Yeah, the 2000 to 11, 2013, 14, I'm doing 4 hours tactics a day. I come home and I do tactics books, online tactics, for various different things. And probably doing a lot of the wrong things, like doing puzzles that are too hard, which I don't think I wouldn't do now. I would do lots of simple patterns,
Yeah.
is what I would do now and recommend. Because I was doing the tactics trainers and things like that. And the problem with that, from what I'd learned later on, is that it sort of hits you at your actual rating, whereas I think it's generally better to be studying tactics a lot lower rated than you actually are. So you're getting the simple patterns base, if that makes sense, if it making any sense at all. But that's kind of what I'd recommend now. It's what I do recommend, really. So if you're sort of 1600, I'd be looking at doing 1200 rated tactics. It's the same thing that Dan Heisman used to say as well, like years ago.
Yeah,
You're getting
yeah,
this,
Dan.
getting really, really good at the simple patterns, and then your calculation then can sort of come from getting good at the basic patterns, really. Whereas I was like hitting the tactics trainers, and the tactics would then become calculation exercises. But obviously you make mistakes early on, but that's something that I wouldn't do again if I was, starting again. Volume,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Dan Heisman's very I agree, very informative on
yeah,
those topics. And I agree, like
mm,
once you've laid the foundation, like then you can start to push yourself. But
yeah,
you gotta learn the basics first. It's like you have to know
yeah,
the verb root before you can conjugate it, sort of thing.
yeah.
Um,
That's it. Yeah,
so so you mentioned there were some good choices, some less good in terms of which tactics resources you used. Are there any that you did find particularly helpful, John?
um, I did have the Chess Polgar book. That
Yeah,
did the mates in
classic.
two. I skipped the mates in one, and a lot of the mates in two. the mates in three and things like that. They're quite good, see drilling the patterns. I use online sources, and I took like samples, like for example, can I mention the site? I don't know if
Oh, of course, yeah.
the website. Yeah, I did like the ChessTempo website. I subscribed there for a few weeks. That was quite good. And taking the basic set, so I try and find patterns that was, when I got used to it, lower rated patterns, and I drill those over and over again. So I was getting strong at the simpler patterns, pins and
Okay.
tactics and things like that, folks.
And
Yeah.
how often? So you've mentioned to me that you're predominantly a tournament player, and that all your work, whether it was online or not, was with the goal of getting better at tournament chess. So I'm curious, John, how often were you playing?
Yeah, that's right. I never really liked playing online, various different reasons, Lee. But yeah, so I joined a chess club, and I like the individual tournaments because it's just you. But the vast majority of my games were team events, the local leagues. So there's like six in a team, sometimes eight, depends what division you're playing in. So the team events, the dynamic's slightly different because, if your team's 2-0 up and you're playing someone who's lower rated and offers you a draw, then the captain's like, yeah, take the draw.
Right.
So which is which is not, a lot of people say don't take the draw, always play on, and I think that's absolutely sound advice. But if it's a team event, you have to think about the team as well. Whereas if I was playing in a tournament, I would kind of like not take the draw and I play on and I try and win, and I didn't really care. I keep going. And I think where I had to play again, I think I just refuse every single draw and keep playing on. Well, maybe not every single draw, but not just for the sake of the team that you have to play on. You have to have that sort of selfish kind of attitude, I think, if you want to improve. And by taking early draws, sometimes you're missing out on board experience. And in terms of numbers, I was doing about 30 to 35 games a year, which is I wanted to try and do more, but I can only play what's there. Really, there's not many tournaments around. And for some strange reason in this country, certainly up the north, they seem to put the same type of tournaments on the same day. It's just really
Okay.
frustrating. So there's a 20-minute rapid tournament, and it's in Leeds, and it's in Nottingham, and it's in New York. So you could be in three places at once. You could play three tournaments, but that wasn't really the case.
Okay.
So yeah, so
And
30 games a year. I try and supplement that with some online games, some longer online games with like people, like friends and people that I know and things like that. But I wasn't really very good at doing that because it's like trying to organise when you're both free is a bit of a pain, and my internet access was never very good. So I didn't really trust a 3-hour chess game online because, I try, but yeah. So it's basically 35 quality games a year, but it was what I was looking at, really.
okay. And
Yeah,
you're in Sheffield. So
yeah,
was were there places? So you mentioned part of the issue is that even if you travel, the tournament is going to be the same day, that you might play locally. Was there anywhere further afield you could think of going? Like, what were your life circumstances in terms of like even trying to play more than you did? Although obviously what you did worked pretty well.
yeah. Well, I was probably getting in. I was playing in the county leagues as well, and that there was actually they were on Saturdays, so I'm playing in the Yorkshire League, and then travelling further afield for those matches, and the local leagues for midweek, which is normally every Mondays or Wednesdays or things like that. But the tournaments, if you go looking for tournaments, there's not many tournaments like scheduled individual tournaments. Really, I look on the calendar. There's quite a few in London. If you're in London, you're fine. I did travel to London for some tournaments, a couple of times actually, but it does make it, a fairly expensive day out, and it's a full day into London, and I've done that a couple of times, but I couldn't really justify spending 200 quid, to go to a tournament that's just going to benefit me when, I've got kids and wife to think about.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so kind of like limited in what 30, 35 games is kind of what could only really achieve, really,
Okay.
for the long standard games. Yeah.
A- and are your wife and kids supportive overall? I mean, aside from obviously that it's hard to just
Oh
leave.
yeah, I mean they're just happy to get to get me out of the house. So there was no problem with that. They can watch what they want on TV without me complaining in the morning. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
yeah,
kids are fine as I
yeah,
leave if I leave, as long as mom doesn't leave. But but
yeah, yeah,
nonetheless, I try not to push it, and like I don't go to like here in the US, Foxwoods Open is a big one, but it's like 5
yeah,
days. I don't go for the 5-day tournaments. I'm going 2 or 3 days if I
yeah.
go somewhere. Um,
Yeah, I mean, the tournaments here were tended to be either 1-day rapid events, which the rapid events are good, but really I wanted to try and get the quality long games in, and they're like 3-day events,
right.
and I, I did a couple of those. I mean, there was a Sheffield tournament that was easy. I obviously played that one. I did win that tournament, and then got back to the year after, and then there was no more tournaments. But the 3-day events not great really. I did do one which was about 50 miles away, and I just didn't do the Friday. I took a bite on the Friday and went Saturday, Sunday. But there are some events I just can't get to. I've not got a car, right? So it's terms online on trains, and the trains are very, very hit and miss. Like it's just like, for example, no train back on a Saturday night. So I'm stuck in another area, and I can't get back, so I can't play. So
Mm.
the only other thing I did the simuls every year, the whole Grandmaster Challenges. They were absolutely fantastic events. They definitely
Yeah,
highlight the calendar.
I want to
Yeah,
hear about those later. But first, John, I got to
yeah,
ask
yeah, sure.
all these Chessable royalties, and you didn't buy a car with them?
Oh, I don't want a car. No, no chance. No, I'm not a driver.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
no,
and
no.
as I mentioned before on the pod, there's legions of stories of chess players who are bad drivers. So maybe maybe it's for the best that
Yeah, I'm not a good. I had experience. I was 17 years old, and my uncle was a driving instructor and also sergeant, army sergeant. So I didn't really work out very well. Well,
okay.
I wasn't very good at driving. Yeah, I wasn't really. I did have a motorbike for a while, which is kind of like worrying. But yeah,
Okay. So, John, you're grinding tactics. You're putting in lots of hours a day,
yeah.
playing 30 to 35 games per year. Now, one question I had is you mentioned you would try to supplement with online games, but it was tough to schedule. You would have internet issues. But when you managed to make it happen, did you feel like the online games were as good a training as the actual OTB games?
Not really. I mean, what I did try to do is a couple of times I'd set the board up upstairs. I set the board up, and then I'd make a move online if they were long enough, and then I'd transfer the moves to the board. To try and get that 3D experience. And I did that a couple of times, but it's a little bit cumbersome,
Yeah.
really. And I don't really like the sort of 2D setup online, things like
Yeah.
that. I mean, it's okay. It's definitely got its benefits, but I this is the club experience, and it's not even just your game, because if you're down at the club, you've finished your game, you're walking around picking things up, by sort of osmosis, really. So it's the whole event of going to the league games or the tournaments that I think you can talk to the players there, and things like that, really. So
Yeah.
online, I mean, I have this really, really good supportive online chess club. So I like thank them there. I put a note on my paper, thank the people, so they know they are. Thank you. It's really, really useful to have a supportive network of people around you who can guide you, and thank you for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Y- Yeah. And in terms of like meeting with your team, were you guys reviewing games together? Like were you guys going out for drinks after the games, or was it pretty much just sort of play the game and that's it?
Always have a drink after the game. That's part of going
Nice.
down to the club.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, but a little bit of the reviewing, yeah, definitely. Not much in terms of like bringing games to review. It's kind of after the game, you'd always review the games with your opponent. Yeah, definitely. Very friendly network down in Sheffield and Yorkshire, really generally.
Yeah, it
That was
sounds
very, very,
nice.
very helpful.
We don't
Yeah,
have as much league
definitely.
stuff here in the US,
Yeah, I know.
unfortunately.
Yeah, I kind of pick that up. It's more individual tournaments. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does help the social element if you're working in the team and things, but it can hinder a little bit, like I said earlier, with you're looking at what the team's doing, and
Right.
you just offer me a draw. Should I take a draw? Or with 2-0 up, yeah, you take the draw. Okay, take a draw. Let's go and get a drink, that
Yeah.
type of thing. But yeah,
And John, do you know your opponents in advance? Like you mentioned openings weren't a big priority, but would you ever be preparing openings for someone?
only after a few years, like obviously when I first played in the leagues, I didn't know I was playing. But then when I got to know the people, there's a little bit of that going on, already, but you don't know exactly who you're going to get. Like, because you've got a board order. Really. Let's say I'm playing board two, board three. I'm looking at the club I'm going to play against. I could get this guy. I could get this guy. I could get this guy. You don't really know until they bring the team sheet out. So a little bit, but not much. But I used to play this guy and he used to play like these weird trappy openings every single time. But he prepared a different weird trappy opening every time you played him. You know. So, but my strategy when I played that guy was just let's just play really dull, solid boring chess, and I'll bore him, and he'll like overreach and make a mistake, and he often did that and won those games. Or his like crazy tactics to start work really. So you do know the sort of player, and sometimes like someone said to me, oh, you've got him. Like he knows the Sicilian 30 moves in or whatever, 30 moves in. But he said, don't play Sicilian. He'll play Sicilian Dragon against you. Don't play it. So I says, okay. So I only know E4. Right.
Right.
So what did you expect me to do? So I played E4. We played the Dragon. And I've never played against the dragon before, I think, the first time, so a few times. And it was a hit and miss game, like Sicilian dragons can be. And I nearly won, I got nearly won, but I didn't nearly won. And at the end of the game, he says, "What did you play, Sicilian dragon?" I told you not to play. Yeah, but I can't play D4, So little things like that, little quirks you can do. Like on this guy, he plays the French. Oh no, what are you going to do? I don't know.
That's funny.
Hear the French. He's going to play the French. Right. Well, he's going to play the French. Right, I'm going to play the exchange variation. Oh, he can't do that. It's a boring nothing. Well, he shouldn't play the French then, should it? It's his fault. It's not mine. You know. So that's my attitude. Don't play it then. Don't play E6. So a
Yeah.
little bit of that, but mostly you can't really play. And the Saturday games, you don't see them as much. You like playing different counties and things like that. So you can't really prepare for them. Really,
Okay.
unless you've been playing. I mean, a lot of these people I'm playing against have been playing in the leagues, 20, 30, 40 years, and they know each other inside out. So they probably can do. But in terms of me just turning up, not really. I can't really do that. Plus, I can't really prepare openings anyway. Forget them. So
Okay.
yeah,
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 and John, your visualized courses. I know you've got some other courses on Chessable too, but I've
yeah,
mentioned them in the past. But basically, for listeners who aren't familiar, they're pretty. There are some other products on the marketplace like this now, but at the time, I mean, they're still great, and I think they were new at the time. Where basically,
yeah,
John will present you with a position, and then give you a handful of moves. It might be 2 moves, it might be 5, depending on the level of difficulty. And the tactics problem is that many moves in advance. So the idea is it trains you to see ahead in sort of a unique way that actually mimics OTB play. So I'm curious, John, like how that idea came to you and how it incorporated into your own training.
yeah. Well, like going back 2 years before that, what I used to do is I sometimes find myself, once a game or once every other game, in a really complicated sort of calculation exercise, what was basically calculation exercise. And when I was low on time, especially, I was kind of like redoing the moves in my head. I'm not really trusting my calculations, and I sort of come to the conclusion it's probably a visualization error. So what I used to do is I used to do a little bit of training on that, and I used to get. You can try this for free. Well, I shouldn't say that, but you try this for free. You get a random chess book, and this is what I used to do. I used to find a middle game position, and I cover up the moves. I wouldn't love that. I set them up to a real board, find somewhere quiet, and all I would do is literally then uncover the moves and just follow the moves. Move 28, fix that position. Move 29, fix that position to 30, so on. And I'd just see how far I could go. And it was really difficult at first because you're looking at the board and you're trying to calculate. You look at a chess position, and you're automatically trying to find the best move. I'm saying no. What I want to try and do here is just isolate that visualization skill. That visualization exercise. I'm not calculating. I'm not playing guess the move. I'm not looking for like positional concepts. I'm literally just following the moves in my head, and that's it. Right. And it worked. It definitely worked. It was a bit cumbersome doing it that way because you'd turn the page and it's like black resigned. And like, oh crap, I've got to find another position and and do it like that. But I used to do that not very often, like a couple of times a week. And I'd give myself half an hour. How much can I push? I was really, surprised at how much I could push my visualization if when just in isolation that way. So a couple of years later, somebody said, I think I got a couple of courses out. Oh, you should do a visualization course. My coach says I need to practice visualization. And I said, oh, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Like, but didn't really think much of it. And a couple of days later, somebody else says you should do a visualization course. So I thought, well, 2 people in 2 days have just mentioned that I should do a visualization course. Maybe I should look into it. And then that's when I thought, well, I used to do this method and I know it works. So I could potentially do this on Chessable and have a position and just have a list of moves. And I presented my ideas in my online chess group, and I said, "All I'm going to do, look, here's a position, here's a bunch of moves." And a friend of mine, Lauren, says, "Oh, are you going to have a tactic at the end of the line?" I think I says, "No, I think it could be all right. I didn't used to do the tactics at the end of the line. I just used to follow as much as I can and do 10 moves if I could." And he says, "Yeah, I don't think it quite worked without a tactic." So I think actually, I went away and thought about it and thought, "Yeah, it's probably right. People are going to think, here's a chess position, here's a bunch of moves. What's this about, basically?"
Right.
So I put the tactic at the end of the line, and from the first course, which is the sort of primer course, so the bit I definitely start and visualize one. And yeah, I did present this idea to Gert at the time, and he's like, "I just don't get it. You're telling people the moves they can just cheat." I said, "Well, no, because you'd just be cheating yourself. The idea is you follow the moves in your head, and then you try and find the tactic." He says, I don't really understand it. People are just going to cheat. So he says, go away and write me an introduction. So I went away and I wrote the introduction, and I know this works. I was a bit angry. If you read the introduction, it's a little bit, yeah, like, and then so, it's a bit like that. I calmed down and visualized too. And then he read the introduction and he said, oh yeah, I totally get it now. I get you now. Thanks for putting the introduction. He put it out, and then it was, we're successful on the weekend. And then he come back and says, can you do visualize 2, 3, 4, and 5? I said, yeah, okay.
That's funny. So
Basically.
this, of course, is Geert
Yeah.
Vanderveld, who was recently on the pod, the CEO of Chessable. I'm guessing he wasn't the CEO at the time, right? He was maybe content
No,
manager?
no. Yeah, I was a content person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to Geert, but that's a
Yeah.
funny
Thank
story.
you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's a funny
Yeah, I
story.
did. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I know there's a lot of adults who, especially if you start chess as an adult, stuff like John's course can be immensely helpful. So what else are you doing, and as you continue to climb the rating ladder, John, like how did things change for you? Like you mentioned, you never did openings much. Did that, to reach roughly 1800 equivalent, did that ever change, or have tactics always been your priority?
Tactics has always been the sort of the backbone, really. But yeah, I did have to start doing the openings. I couldn't really just do E4 for the rest of my life. I still play E4, but yeah, I studied the openings. And to be honest, I don't really enjoy studying the openings. There's only one opening I like, and that's it. It's like one opening. Well, I did put time into studying the openings, and I did all the drilling, the opening business, and that just really didn't work for me at all. It's like this, you drill a particular opening, Icelandic Gambit, for example, for like 6 months or a year, and then you'd never play it, and then you'd change your opening. So all
Right.
that time was just completely wasted, you know. Uh, so the approach that I did eventually adopt is try to find structures and systems. Like the one opening that I like, and I'll say it anyways, is a D3 Roy. Right, I saw that position, I saw that structure, and I thought I know how to play this. So maybe because I've read so many annotated games, and it just felt natural. And I'm doing it on sort of theory, not on actual theory, sorry, but on feel of the position, and I know what sort of structural aims I'm aiming for, really, and things like that. So and we did one study the Benoni as a group together, so that was really useful. I was good at the Benoni for a while, but yeah, if I was to come back into chess, and I think I would have to really look at my repertoire. I've actually just played a game of chess. First time I played a game of chess just now at school. Like, this young man said, can you give me a game?" Like, so I said, "Yeah." And he played the King's Gambit, and I totally forgot what to do. I'm like, literally, on move two, and I'm making up moves. I've no idea. I think this kid's probably like 1,000 meter or something. And I'm like, "You played the King's Gambit? What have you done that for? You don't know that one? I forgot." So yeah, so the opening studies, I've never really been good at that. I always felt really this. I've got to try and find an edge over the board. Like, how do I find an edge against someone who's been playing chess for 30 years? Well, if I just study everything in the same way, I'm going to kind of just, I'm not going to be, find that edge. So I've tried to find that edge through tactics. I think the other approach that you could do, if you really, I really like tactics. I really like doing calculation exercises. Yeah, I do chess puzzles for fun. So that approach really, really worked for me. I mean, the other approach is to really get a narrow sort of repertoire and play sort of dry positions and play for the end game. If you don't like doing the tactics, I think that could work as well, and try and find an edge there. I know a lot of club players do that. They
Yeah.
play like a system opening. They don't like the tactics, or they don't want to. They still do the tactics, obviously, but they get to know the system opening. They aim for an end game and that type of thing. I think that's both of it sort of viable options. But I just felt if I had like half an hour studying openings, half an hour studying end games, half an hour studying tactics, half an hour going through games, or I wouldn't really kind of trying to find an edge, if that makes sense. I don't know. Right, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's definitely interesting to me because so many people gravitate towards openings, but you from the beginning
Yeah, I know
were
they do.
less
Yeah,
interested.
because no. Yeah, I mean, so I help out the chess club at school, and like it's quite interesting seeing these kids who are the online ratings like 1,000 and stuff, and they're really enthusiastic, which is absolutely brilliant. So help out doing that, but they're kind of, well, what do you play? I play the King's Indian. Well, I don't
Yeah,
know, a
exactly.
little bit drawish, and I'm thinking, I said, look, just I'm not trying to give advice. Never give advice to young people.
What
Just
age are
try
the
and help.
kids?
And they're about 14, 15, something like that.
Okay, and of course,
Yeah.
lately we've been hearing a lot, us chess fans, about the explosion of popularity in chess at schools. Have you experienced that over there in Great Britain as well?
A little bit, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, I have noticed for this last couple of years, chess seems to be, a lot of people are bringing chessboards in, which is pretty cool.
Okay,
Yeah,
but it
definitely.
hasn't been like for example, starting in December, around the time Levy Rosman started posting on TikTok, like there's been an article in the New York Times, like there's been like more exponential growth in the past
All
6
right.
months or so. You haven't witnessed that firsthand?
Not firsthand.
Because
I tend to
it
just
might
sort
be
of come in,
more,
do my own
it
thing.
might be more local, more provincial. It might be in the U.S., but not as much in Great Britain. And obviously,
Yeah,
chess
I
is
can't
doing
say that.
fine everywhere. But I was just curious.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. I have seen this sort of groups of 8 or 9 kids in the school that I'm in that working on chess players. But yeah, it could just be that those pockets of students. I don't really know, to be honest. Yeah, it's
Okay.
good news though if the chess boom, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean
Okay.
the one thing, it's not transferring to the local club scene, unfortunately, because when I was still playing, back in before the pandemic, we had like there was like one team that tried to get kids into chess, and they do a good job, but it doesn't really filter through to the clubs, and you've got a lot of old people. And I'm known as a young person, I was in my 40s, right? So, I'd like to see there's some kids coming in, but not as many maybe as hopefully there is now. I don't know. I've not been down to the club. I've even not been around back down to the club since. So I don't know. Hopefully
Oh,
that they are coming in.
okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and for these tournament games that you played through your slow and steady ascent, what was your approach to game review, John?
Oh yeah. So every single game, I would review it again. I just followed the advice of what clever people have done, like Dan Heisman and other people, a bit more experienced players, which is obviously talk through with the person at the time. That's really important, I think, because you get that initial impression, and then the next day, it's usually the next day, I go through the game myself without a computer, with anything like that, or anybody else's help. And I used to annotate the game myself as I'm going through it. So I'm putting my own thoughts in, I'm trying things around like that. And then I would post it in my online chess group, and they would sort of give me comments and things like that. And then I'd think about it for a couple of days. And the game's still in my head at night. I can't sleep. The game's going through my head. And I get up in the morning and think, oh, maybe I should have played this move. And I'll go back and look at that. And then, like at the end of the week, I maybe look at the engine and just think, oh God, I could have done that. But you're always the engine laugh. I tried to squeeze as much because I was only playing 30, 35 games a year. I had to sort of squeeze as much out of that as I could, really. So that was the process. Myself for a couple of days, my own thoughts, friends, then engine. Yeah,
Okay.
I did that with every single game, every single long game, because that's another thing that I've seen. Lots of people they go down, they play the game, they do analyze the games, and I'm thinking that's just insane. Why would you
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah.
You know,
I couldn't agree
yeah.
more. And were there particular recurring weaknesses that you identified? Like what did you have to shore up?
Oh, absolutely. So what I did one year is say that with glee. I don't know. Is I analysed all 35 games. So I'm going to sit down and I'm going to we'll do like a batch analysis, and I put a video on about how to do this. And what I did is I went through every single game, and I want to take out one thing that I did well, and one thing that I can improve upon in that game. Where's the weakness, right? And the thing about doing well, okay, I wasn't really concerned about that. It was what was the weakness in that game. So let's say I lost that game. Why did I lose it? Did I lose it because it's opening, end game, tactics attacking, tactics defensive, or some sort of strategy positional concept? And I know it's hard to sort of boil a chess game down into one of those areas, but if I had to do it, where would I put it in and do a little tally chart? So I went like that from game one to game 35 and did a little tally chart. And I was absolutely blown away by what I found actually, which made me, change the way I sort of studied a little bit. So I would have been convinced that I would have had out of the 30, 35 games, like 8, I would put down to losses out the opening. I get a worse position out the opening and it just deteriorates and I lose. I thought it was something about 8. It was actually like 3.
Yeah.
Right? I
Yeah.
was like, so I'm panicking about these openings, and it's not actually obviously 3 out of 30 is not great. I was really, really happy to find that in terms of attacking tactics, I'd missed one tactic in  35 games of 30 games. So I was really pleased with that. And obviously, oh, I should have mentioned, if it was a draw, I'd still try and find the move, or even if I won the game, I'd still try and find the best moves. And there was one game where my opponent dropped a piece on move 6, and I just ignored that game. So I went through every sort of game systematic like that with a tally chart, and everything like end games like 3 or 4, not too bad. And it was tactics, threat awareness, 17.
Mm. Wow.
Right. Wow. Yeah. So wow. So what I learned from that is tactically, I'm doing all these tactic studies, and it's working aggressively, but it's not working in terms of threat awareness. And that's what I needed to do to shore up really. And So that's I kind of went on blunderbusters on the back of that. And I was always aware of that, these tactical threats. And strategy things weren't too bad either, but needed to work on threat awareness tactics. And I've always asked the question: if you're studying tactics, does that improve your threat awareness of tactics? Well, probably to some degree, but in terms of my stats, then not really. So yeah. So then the next season's focus was then to try and work on threat awareness, but it was coming up close to the pandemic at this point. I can't quite remember if I had a year to doing that or whether that was 2019. I'm not sure. But yes, I'd
Okay.
recommend doing that. I think that was a useful tip because you have it in your head that you're really bad at one thing, and then when you actually look at the evidence, you might not be that thing. So for that season, for example, with the 17 games lost because of tactical threats, going out and buying an opening book on the Sicilian Dragon or whatever, it's not going to help me, is it? The fact is, I need to focus on my weaknesses, and people, I think, sometimes don't want to really focus on the weaknesses, or they need to identify the weaknesses in the first place. But I know if you go out and write a book on defense, you're going to sell 10% as a book that's got attack on. So
Right.
maybe but I definitely, for me, it's the threats.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
think it's fairly common that like you can spot tactics when they're for your side, but when
yeah,
your opponent has them, they're harder to spot. But I also think it's important for listeners the idea that it's not like you're saying everyone needs to work on that. You're saying you analyzed your games and realized that's what
yeah,
you needed to work on.
yeah, exactly. I mean, could have done that, and if it had come up openings 14, then I would have, actually really put my study into the openings. I'm just trying to sort of like work out where my weaknesses are, train my weaknesses, and that's how we do it. Really, I think that's what I would need to do if I were to carry on, is to fix my weaknesses, and I'd test my weaknesses. And it is difficult being an adult when you're playing against people because what I'd always struggle with is the time pressure, like because then you get down to your patterns, that's ingrained. And you're playing against someone who's been playing 30 years. They're good at faster chess, and adults are often slower at not as good at the faster chess, and make mistakes. So, and my local league games with no increment ever.
Oh wow.
So it was a bit really annoying me. It was a 70 G75 of local league games, and then the weekend games were better quality. It was like G120. So I was able to think my way out of trouble really there. But so it come to the point in petitions where people were like a queen up and they'd lose on time. Some guy got a pawn and they'd won, right? Because that's just the local leagues, And I did try and change that, but sometimes, oh no, we can't. It's always been this way.
Right.
you know, it's
And
not.
so
Try to change that.
did you do anything to work on the time management issue you mentioned?
I it, it, I did a lot of online blitz and bullet, and I've tried to focus on playing non-losing moves. So, and just moving at speed, playing okay moves and just not blundering, if that makes sense. Like I was playing a blitz game. Obviously I'm trying to win, but I'm like, let's try and avoid mistakes more. That was my focus. I didn't really care about the result. Just to, look through how many blunders I made, and I kind of did that, tried to help. And I think it did improve, and having a bit blitz strategy and looking at the clock thinking, well, it's a 75-minute game. You play a little bit, you're out of the opening, you're into an early middle game, you look at your clock, you're 40 minutes, or you've got 40 minutes on your clock, and then you've got sort of 20 minutes. Oh, well, now we're in a rapid game. We're actually playing a rapid game. This goes down as a standard rating, but we're playing a rapid game, and that can soon turn into sort of a 5-minute game.
Yeah.
And uh, this is another issue with that's the time controls. That's what I had to sort of live with really. But you get into a position and you're 5 minutes on your clock, your opponent's got 8 minutes on theirs, and they offer you a draw, and you seem to take the draw because you can lose on time.
Yeah.
you know, so it's a bit frustrating. Whereas in other areas of the UK, they have 5-second increment, and then you can't really lose on time. Well, you can, but you've
Yeah,
got a bit of
you
a
definitely
safety
can,
gap.
but yeah, I get your
Yeah,
point.
so I had to sort of tailor my training to the time controls in the local leagues.
Okay.
You know,
So, John, you mentioned earlier there are a couple things you would have done differently if you could all over again. But let's sort of, for our listeners who are maybe earlier in their journey than you, if you could start all over, knowing now what knowing then what you know now, how would you spend those 4 to 5 hours per day?
that's a really good question. So I would still, for myself, I would still have a focus on tactics, but the tactics that I would study, I would make sure I've always said they're like an 80-20% rule. So 80% of my time studying tactics that are simpler than my current rating. So let's say you're 1500. try and find tactics that are like 1,000, 1,100 rated and drill those tactics to get really good at those 80% of the time. And then 20% of that time, I would do harder calculation exercises. So, I'm still practicing. You still have
So,
to practice the
so
calculation.
all
So that would be
tactics
my
still.
time.
I mean, all tactics
No,
and
no, no.
calculation.
Well, no. Say you've got 5 hours, whatever you've got, the time that you allot to
Oh,
studying
of that
tactics,
time. Okay,
yeah,
got it.
of the tactic time you're allocating, 80% of that time
Okay.
simple, 20% of that time your more complex tactics, and then I would have some sort of more balance. I would have some try and do some sort of threat awareness, do a little bit of visualization, not much, just a little bit a week, and then maybe have some general opening sort of study bit around structures rather than moves. I wouldn't bother drilling moves. I'm really against drilling sort of openings. So you're memorizing the openings, but having some ideas of structures for openings is really useful. Pawns. There's the pawn structure book was really good.
Yeah,
The
floors
pawn structure
reels.
book. You
Yeah,
the
chess
one,
structures.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, things like that. Looking at that and looking at I'm playing, or even just like I'm playing a closed structure, so I'm all right to move around a bit. I'm playing a semi-open position, getting a feel for that, and I got that through the annotated games. So it wasn't like I was just doing tactics. I was reading the Alakine book. Yeah, I was always finding good things from there, and the JNF books and things like that. So I'm picking up strategy as well. So I definitely go over annotated games. So the second thing I do tactics first. Most of my time spent in tactics. Then it'd be annotated games. Then it would probably be your basic end games. You need to know your basic end games, king and pawn end games. The Silman book's good for that actually.
Yeah,
He says
exactly.
learn this, come back when you're 1400 or whatever.
Yeah.
I quite like that approach. I'd do that. Then I'd have some opening structure, and then I'd do last thing I'd do is a little bit of visualization just to tie it all together and have a nice balanced approach. But that's the general plan. But when you're studying chess, you kind of get sidetracked a lot. The openings are a black hole, let me tell you. And if you
Yeah.
do start doing too much openings, you neglect the other areas of chess, and then you find, or I found that, I've just dumped that opening. People change their openings all the time, so all that study is basically wasted. So you want to be, if you are studying openings, if you're studying it in terms of like the structures, like you're always going to be okay with that. Yeah, looking at analysing the pawn structures and this particular opening, that's useful study. Or if you're analysing openings in terms of what are the middle game plans I'm getting from this particular opening structure, that's useful. But if you're just drilling like I did for a year, the Icelandic Gambit, and then never playing it again, it's just a waste of time. Right. So that's what I do basically, I think. And sorry, yeah, and go to the chess club. Yeah, go
Yeah.
join the club if you can, and then you're just picking up things you don't realise, and you don't learn it, how to use a clock from a book. Really, you make a mistake in a tournament, but if you go down to the club, you don't make that mistake. You're talking to other people. I mean, it's different. If you're a kid, or kids can basically do anything. You can pick up a chess book and do anything, and it just seems to absorb stuff. But as an adult, you kind of need to be more determined and focused, and also see it as a long term project. You need to see like chess improvement as a 5-year project or a 6-year project, or don't you kind of give up straight away. You see it as a longer term investment. Don't set yourself too high goals. Keep the goals low, and then just keep going and pick up experience. But yeah, joining the chess club is really, really really useful because you get the feedback from experienced players. So definitely that's what I do.
Okay, great advice, and we'll get to your current non-chess project momentarily. But
Yeah,
if you were, say you were to go back and say, "I'm going to
yeah.
make one more push and try to make it to 2200," would your advice or whatever rating, would your advice change at all based on where you are now, firmly intermediate, quite accomplished in terms of what you've done, or does the advice basically stay the same?
I think, and if I was now, so for example, the challenge would be to get back over 1800, go towards 1900. So I think my advice probably would be slightly different, and I'd have to look at my own weaknesses again. So that would be, defensive side positions, threat awareness, having a more compact opening repertoire. I think trying to do too much, like I tried to play e4 and take on open Sicilians and take on different things. I'd have to look at sort of narrowing that down a little bit. I don't mean like just completely changing what I do. I play the D3 Roy structure and having some sort of repertoire, but not drilling the openings in still. So I still like it's about looking at the weaknesses. I've got the basic tactical patterns. Obviously, I'm very rusty, but it would be more the openings and looking at the end games and things as well, and more of a balanced approach, I think. And I've always can sort of feel a difference when I played against 1900, 2000 rated players. They're very, very tough, and they're very. It's all relative, of course, but I can't be. I remember I was a piece up against a 1900, and I thought, well, it's just a case of trading off and winning. And no, he ended up getting a draw at the end because he's just very, very determined defensively. And you learn a lot from that. I think playing stronger opponents. That's another good tip.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
makes
it's
sense.
it's bound. Yeah. But I mean, you're kind of close to your tactical strength. I think no matter what sort of level you're at, tactics are always there. But yeah, I quite like to have other than to try, but I think I'd be 50 plus at that point. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll
All
see.
right.
We'll
Well,
see. Yeah. Yeah.
lots of
So,
great chess advice, John, and I have to say, I mean, for
oh,
what it's
thanks.
worth, I mostly agree with your
Yeah.
conclusions. I think there's a lot of great advice to save people a lot of time. Now, John, so you're taking a break from chess in order to work on mystery novel. How, which I believe the
Yeah.
first one is released. So, how did this project
Yeah.
come to the fore?
Well, it came to obviously when the lockdown came, and it was like, well, they quickly announced there would be no overboard chess for that year. And then they quickly announced, actually, to be fair, there was no other book chess for the next year. So there's at least a year and a half without any chess. And I thought, well, I tried to substitute that by playing online and didn't really work out. And then I thought, like me, when I haven't got a project on, I'm like walking around the house looking for something to do. So uh, I decided to I've always wanted to write a book. And I think most people say, I always want to write a novel. So yeah, I've been working on that for 2.5 years. The York Mysteries, Lavender and Brown's like a comedy murder mystery. So I think Sherlock Holmes type things, but just be like crazy oddball characters. So yeah, I've done that, and I've written the second book, and that's going to be published in July. And I've got that. This is my next project, really. 5-year project working on this. Yeah.
And as
So
an
so
adult,
you're writing a book then as well? Yeah. Go on. Sorry.
yeah, I am. We'll get to that, but
I'm like,
yeah, as an
okay.
adult improver fiction writer, like what was
Yeah.
the hardest thing to learn?
Well, my degree is in English literature, but that's in literature, not actually writing it. So it was difficult. The first book was 2.5 years of working it constantly every day, basically. And that first book went through 15 drafts, which is a bit insane.
Wow.
I used to go to bed every night thinking plots. I wake up in the morning, run downstairs, write a note down, come back on from work, write that up, and ideas bred ideas. And the early drafts were really, really terrible. But I improved those drafts as I went along and got feedback from people, and then kept improving them. And then when I got that to a particular level, I wrote the second book in six months really because I've already got the characters, working pretty well. And the second book's absolutely crazy. It's just insane. So really farcical, quite fun to do. But I have to I had to make that decision. I cannot immerse myself into things like the chess and the novels, and with other board chess like not existing, I had to find that gap really. So I'm focused on the novels. If I was to do chess and the novels, I feel maybe I don't know. I feel like both wouldn't get the attention they deserved, and I'd be sort of watering down both elements. I'd be playing chess, but my heart won't be in it. I'd be writing the book, but I'm kind of thinking about chess puzzles and a little bit, So I still keep my eye in the chess world a little bit, but I have to be really fully focused on the writing. And, that's where my ideas come because if I start writing a chapter, so let's say I'm writing the book 3 at the moment, I've done 3 chapters and I've got a rough idea where chapter 5 and 6 is going. And I know what's going to happen chapter 10. But as soon as I start writing chapter 4, then ideas for chapters 5 and 6 start to develop, and as
Yeah.
it goes along. So I need to keep the ball rolling on that point, And I do things like I've got to do it every single day. So I've had key rings made with lavender brown key rings. So every time I pick my keys up, it's like lavender brown, lavender brown. You must be doing this. You must be working on this. Cups with a name on. So it kind of reminds me that this is my project now for 5 years, at least. And and it's costing me a lot of money doing it, but I don't care really. This is my project. I'm going to work at it and see how it goes. Really, it's really enjoyable. I don't want to say really enjoyed the lockdown, but having time off work, sitting on the back garden, writing, thought, yeah, if I could do this for a living, this would be brilliant.
Right.
So I'm going to try. It's not going to be up for a living, but it's a project. I'm enjoying doing it. So, and I flick through the books and I've read them 15 times. I'm still laughing. That's a little bit sad, but, you know, that's just
Great.
me, really.
And it's called
Yeah.
the first one is called York. The series is called York Mysteries. Is that correct?
Well, it's just Lavender and Brown, and the first one's the York Mysteries.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's set in York in 1888.
Excellent.
So it's like,
Um,
think Sherlock Holmes style, but with just crazy characters, really.
Sounds
Yeah,
fun. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, John, this has been great. Anything else you feel like listeners should know before we say our goodbyes?
I would just hugely recommend doing simul games because that was like
Oh yeah,
the
yeah. So you
highlight
played
of my years,
some
definitely.
prominent players, or
Yeah, yeah. I played like Michael Adams. I've played Luke McShane, David Howell,
all the British
Ginger GM,
legends?
players like that.
Yeah.
All the British top players. Yeah, all of them apart from Nigel Shaw, who would not come around. Really, really good. Really, really good experience. If you could do a simul, just do it. I don't know why I got invited because it was Hull, and I'm not from Hull. It's 100 mile away, but I got invited to play in that, so I went every year. Really, really good. And got sat with Luke McShane on the train, which was cool because we basically mugged him. Like, my friend says, "Oh, come and sit with us, Luke." And he come on the train, and he's like flustered. I think he didn't know if he was on the right train, so we helped him out. We gave him 5 minutes to sit down and relax, and then we absolutely battered him with chess questions. Right,
Right.
and he was sorry, Luke, but actually no, because I did say, "Are you playing in this tournament in London? This Luke's Place tournament?" In 3 weeks. He said, I don't know about that. So I showed him the tournament listings. He said, oh, yeah, I might go play in that. So I went 3 weeks later and I saw him again, and he spoke to me again. He must have thought that's that crazy guy from the train. And he actually won the tournament, and he won several £1,000s. So, you
Okay.
know,
Nice. Yeah.
swings and roundabouts from his point of view, really. Yeah. And, the Ginger GM was really good watching him play. Simon Williams,
Yeah.
he's a really funny guy and all that, but he is absolutely ruthless. Like,
He is. Yeah.
don't,
He's
yeah,
a
on
really good
that
player.
really going around the board, and I felt like playing Kasparos or something. It was really, really ruthless. He got to I always like them tournaments because I always like 15 out of 30. So it's like I'm bang in the middle where I wanted to be. And you sometimes got down to the last 8 matches. I lost every one, but I was always disappointed to lose as well. It's like, oh my God, I've lost to Michael Adams. I'm so disappointed. And the Simon Williams was playing the top board of the second board that was left. Everybody gathered around this guy, and Simon Williams had got a rook and a king, and this guy had got a knight and a king, and it was end game, and he was on like move 47, and they're just repeating moves, and it was like, he's going to get a draw, he's going to get a draw, I need 3 more moves. So the guy makes a move, Simon Williams checks, wins a tactic, picks up the knight, and this guy was devastated, and Simon Williams just went, bad luck that. He was absolutely ruthless. Really good. They're all really good players, all of them. Really,
Yeah.
really polite, very, very, very nice people, and speaking to people after the game and things like that. But just the experience of playing, like Chess Legends doesn't come around very often. It might come around once a year for me, but I would recommend that experience definitely. Yeah, and
Excellent.
and
Yeah.
the simul's are fun because they're very, very quick, very, very slow at first, and obviously as the players get knocked out, it gets faster and faster and faster, and the tension like picks up and picks up. So it's really, really good. Definitely
Fun
recommend.
stuff. All right.
Yeah.
Well, John, congrats on your success with the Chessable courses,
Thank
with
you. Thank you.
your slow and steady rating gain. And yeah, if you
Yeah.
good luck with the novels,
Thank you.
if you do come back, we'll have to do another a part two if you make a chess comeback, say
Yeah.
10 years from now.
Yeah. I will maybe start when I'm 50. I'll try again, maybe. If I've got the
Nice.
books out there and they're under the belt and they're making some money, I'll come back as a 50-year-old and I'll try and get what should we try and do? I don't know, 1900. Let's try. I don't
I
know.
think at least
At least
2000.
another
Yeah.
project. I need a project. I need a project. I can't just come back and watch TV. I do watch TV at night later on, but I need something to do and occupy myself. So yeah.
Excellent.
Can I just want to say like thanks for other people who do buy the courses and send me messages.
Oh, sure.
It's really 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 do appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah, it's
Excellent.
really good.
Yeah, and
And
I'm
all
sure
the
they
people
mean
at the
it.
club as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're worthwhile courses. So,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
because thank you. I get a ping comes up and it's like, I always check my Chessable every day anyway to make sure there's any I always check the courses if there's anything that needs changing or anything like that. And a ping comes up and think, "Has there been a comment on your course?" And I'm thinking, "Oh, it's gonna be negative." And it's not, it's usually positive. So thank you.
I know that
Yeah.
feeling all too
I just
well.
need the same for my novels now.
Excellent. All right. Well, good luck with
Yeah.
the novels, and thank you for
Thank you.
sharing your story, John.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me on. Really, really enjoyed it.